Why do people seem crazy? Why do you keep sabotaging yourself? Where is the human race going? Why is there so much division on Earth? How do we make sense of all this chaos? How can we build a better world? If you want to understand the evolution of humanity right now, if you want to make sense of your own personality and how it develops over time, think in terms of a spiral with 8 different levels. From the moment we're born to the moment we die, our way of seeing the world expands. Once you realize that Santa isn't real, authority figures tell lies, money does not equal happiness, science does not equal truth, and yoga and meditation is not the solution to complex world problems, you can never go back to those perspectives again. They've been shattered for good, and you now find yourself on a new level of awareness. As time goes on, this awareness is continually developing across the world and in your own personality. Each new level of awareness gives you more freedom to see and experience the world as it really is. During the first part of this spiral, our basic motivation is fear, self-preservation, and scarcity. And our lives are spent trying to distract ourselves and cover this up. This is where the majority of the world is today. However, as our awareness develops, we reach a crossover point where this fear drops away. Our view of the world transforms to one of love and abundance. We see ourselves as part of the whole, and we find ourselves in a state of flow and bliss. This is the human journey. When we're born, we start in the center of this spiral. This part is represented by the color beige. At this level, you're purely instinct. All that matters to you is survival. You're hardly even conscious of your own existence. All you care about is food and sleep. Now, hardly any adults in the world are at this stage. Examples would be babies and senile people. Life is basically a moment-by-moment struggle for survival. The next level of development is the purple stage. This is where your ego believes in magic. Think of Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy, and monsters under your bed. Good and bad spirits control everything that happens in the world, and the ego thinks purely in terms of the supernatural. This is where small ethnic tribes band together. The world is a place of good and evil. Good is anything that's good for the tribe, and evil is anything that threatens the tribe. Think of Amazonian rainforest tribes. At this level, you see the tribe as yourself and you're willing to sacrifice yourself for them, but you see other tribes as hostile. We need the tribe in order to get our own needs met. We don't really understand ourselves as a separate person. Babies are said to have this view of their mothers. They can't quite see where baby ends and mummy begins. The strongest emotion felt at this level is fear. Right now, 10% of the world population lives at this level. Over time, we realize that we're a separate person with our own impulses and we progress to the next level. Which brings us to red. Now, the red stage is all about egocentric power. Think of the impulsive toddler. This is where we learn to use the tribe to get what we want. Think of MTV, Thug Life, a gang leader, a dictator, a con artist. People here are impulsive, demanding, and power-driven. They tend to be expressive, to fear shame, to fear the loss of selfhood. It's important for Red to impress, influence, and conquer others. The toddler realizes that it exists in a world with other people who have their own agendas, and that there's some force making things happen. The spirits around us are now seen as gods above and below. The world is a jungle full of cheats and predators. All there is to do is gain power and use it to enjoy yourself without remorse. This level is all about pleasure seeking, living in the now without worrying about the future. 20% of the current world population lives at this level. Now, Red progresses to the next level when their impulsive living ends up destroying them and everyone else around them. Physical force becomes unsustainable. People can't just be killed on an ongoing basis. They don't tolerate it for long, and the people close to you end up getting hurt. So Red surrenders its power seeking and progresses to blue. In the blue level, the theme is absolute truth, which begins the rise of the status quo, the way things are meant to be done. Think of the teenager progressing to junior high school, trying to fit in and stay in line. Think of the organized societies of ancient Greece and Rome. We become aware of how dangerous it is to live for immediate pleasure, and we seek peace, order, and stability. Think of conservative 1950s America with its clear-cut gender roles. This is where we start to search for meaning and purpose, and we look to a higher power for guidance as to what's the right way. We're interested in law and order, a strong work ethic, service to king and country, all for the greater good. People who break these rules deserve to be punished, and the faithful followers of the rules get rewarded. There's an emphasis put on controlling impulse, being honorable, and being reliable. We seek to learn from authority based on expert opinions, facts, and ethics. We accept that our desires might need to be sacrificed for the good of everyone else. There's one way to think about everything, and life is seen as a mission to uphold the absolute principles of truth. All modern political structures rose out of this way of thinking. Now, currently, most of the world population lives at this level, about 40%, and 30% of the power is at this level of consciousness. It's expressed in patriotism, fundamentalist religion, staunch atheism, anywhere that there's conformity to a larger group and one strict way of seeing. Chaos is feared, ambiguity and change and progress is avoided. Now, you start to progress from blue when you look around and you recognize just how blindly everyone conforms to everything they're told. You see that the leaders of blue are really just making up the rules as they see fit, and you decide to go for what you want. Which brings us to orange. The themes are science, business, and competition. Think of Steve Jobs dropping out of college and starting his own business. We start to question everything. Think of the entrepreneur, think of the rogue scientist. The individual is awakening within us, and we start questioning why we have to conform to what everyone else is doing. We separate ourselves from the idea of an all-powerful order, and we start to break down reality into individual, lifeless parts. The universe is basically seen as a big machine, and if we can learn the controls, we can use it for our own personal materialistic gains. Science rules everything, and the world is a big chessboard where games are played by those who really know what's going on. Think of the Cold War, Wall Street, the fashion industry, the tech boom, gym culture. It's all a big competition to achieve results and influence. Now, 30% of the world population is currently at this level, and 50% of the power. Think of the post-war rise of mega corporations. Now, this level of consciousness is what's led to the massive technological breakthroughs of the past 100 years, as well as all of the environmental destruction and economic rape of developing nations across the world. Eventually, the individual in orange begins to see that its behavior is destructive to the world around it. Your material and achievement obsessions are separating you from deep connection with others, and it all eventually fades away, leaving behind you a trail of hollow, self-serving relationships and environmental destruction. The endless striving for bigger and better ends up taking a heavy toll on your spirit. So again, like blue, we begin to search for a deeper meaning. Which brings us to green. So here we become sensitive and others focused again, and we seek to heal the planet and the world around us. We become deeply interested in ourselves, getting to know who we really are, and seeking to heal our inner child. We find a place of inner peace and seek to build community. Decision making is through equality and group consensus. Here, stress is caused by things like exploitation of indigenous groups, plant and animal species going extinct, group division, and a general lack of consideration. Think of the 1960s hippies, Greenpeace, the Occupy Wall Street movement, the New Age movement, and animal rights. The human spirit must be freed from greed and divisiveness. Cold rationality is replaced by feelings and caring. Now, from this perspective, even though all the other levels are wrong, they still need to be included and allowed to express themselves. The baby boomers were the first generation to enter this level en masse. At this level, we believe there can be no hierarchies and no absolutes, except the absolute that there are no absolutes. Everything is relative, up in the air, airy-fairy, and esoteric. Now, like all levels before it, green is full of contradiction. People at green care deeply about the world and human connection, but over time, the focus on feeling and doing no harm can become self-indulgent, escapist, and leads to stagnation. To enjoy the freedom of green, you first have to have progressed through orange, which means you've already achieved a degree of material success. And you're now free to whinge that it's all meaningless without actually wanting to give it up. You eat vegan, buy organic and sustainable, sign petitions and join protests. But you're not really bringing any long-term solutions to the table, just pointing out all the problems with the way things are. Green is seen by lower levels as lazy, unproductive, and a bunch of bleeding hearts that just wants to turn the entire world into a massive yoga studio. Strong egocentric narcissism creates a sense of being in the know and a condemnation of society without any action being taken to change it. While green seems to be coming from a place of love, it's still really in scarcity thinking and reaction against corporate greed and prejudice. Green also gets stuck because it doesn't want to create more division or get rejected for speaking about what it really thinks and sees. 10% of the world currently lives at this level and 15% of those in power. To get beyond itself, green needs to look in the mirror and see what it's doing, to see the self-serving nature of its own belief system and begin to take action beyond that. Now, this sounds simple, but moving from green to the next level is described as a quantum leap of vast distance. At this point, the self moves to what's described as the second tier of levels. After you've moved out of green, you're now able to think both horizontally, so understanding and connecting to your own group, and vertically, so for the first time, you're able to understand the full spectrum of your own development. And you understand that each level is necessary for the health of the individual and the world at large. We can finally see the need for all the levels. Like the molecule, which needs the atom, which needs the proton. Each level goes beyond the last, but loves and cherishes it as a part of itself. The yellow stage and beyond embraces not just the child within, but also the teenager and the young adult. Each part of self can be activated if necessary. Red in response to emergencies, blue to respond to chaos and lawlessness, and orange for material wants and achievements. And we finally let go of fear and move into love. The world is no longer seen in terms of scarcity. We now see only affluence and abundance. Instead of thinking relatively, we now think holistically. This brings us into yellow. We now begin to see the larger patterns of society. we become focused on ecology, promoting harmonious relationships between human systems like financial markets, different cultures, political structures, commerce, food and energy production, and the natural world, the weather, oceans, rivers, the animal kingdom, bacteria, plants, and the natural sciences. We become flexible and flowing in our thinking and see the world as a vast network of interconnected systems. What works for the whole planet takes on the highest priority. Everywhere we look, we see opportunities for integration. Now, the psychology of this person is individualistic, self-actualizing, and free. Stress is caused by stagnant, dull, rule-based contexts which are not stimulating or challenging. Currently, 1% of the population and 5% of the power is at this stage. Think of Carl Sagan's astronomy, Stephen Hawking's brief history of time, chaos theory, eco-industrial parks where systems of production use each other's outflow as raw materials. Now, the primary emotional states felt by yellow are reason combined with love. Finally, the last stage of consciousness that can be grasped here is called turquoise. The primary emotional state felt here is peace and enlightenment. Now, based on where you're at, it's quite difficult to comprehend the levels above you because it's an entirely new paradigm. I don't really understand turquoise at all, but this is a basic description. Turquoise consciousness is totally holistic. It transcends the individual ego and recognizes that there's a spiritual relationship between ourselves and everything else on the planet. Someone who lives in this state is described as living in the now and having a cosmic depth of awareness. Where you could think of yellow as left brain with feelings, you could think of turquoise as right brain with data. Here there's a universal order recognized, but rather than a rigid system of absolutes, it's living and conscious. It's not based on external rules like with blue, or with group bonds like with green. With turquoise, you're intellectually realized and you see things with an unprecedented level of clarity. The focus here is on the ongoing expression and evolution of all life, experiencing the wholeness of existence and accessing the collective mind. The world is seen as a single dynamic organism with its own mind. At turquoise, the focus is on other. Now, currently 0.1% of the world population is at turquoise, and 1% of the world power is at the turquoise level.